Y'all. That's it. Y'all. Peach Pundit, the podcast, is a conversation filled with the personal opinions of the people who are participating. Any view or opinion expressed belongs only to the person who expressed it and not with anyone with whom that person is professionally affiliated. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Peach Pundit, the podcast. My name is Scott Turner, joined this evening by Buzz Brockway. Buzz, how are you?
I'm okay, Scott. How are you doing?
I am saltier than a lick put out for the deer, my friend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty salty. Pretty salty. I'm not going to lie. It's like I've been sitting out in the sun all day long, and it's just crusted to my skin. You ever had that happen to you out working in the yard? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have experienced that in the sunny South.
Welcome back. We had a great episode last week. Thank you to Cole Musio for filling in for you.
Good job.
I think he did do a good job. He did a really good job. We talked a lot about the Dooley campaign for Senate, which I got calls all week long about that.
Whoa.
And do you really think he's dead? Or I was like, I didn't say he was dead. And Cole went so far as to say, here's the roadmap for him to come back from these early stumbles, and gave him grace because he respects Brian Kemp.
I haven't had a chance to listen, but I'm guessing Cole was concerned about his answer on the pro-life issue, which I saw got some attention.
Yeah, which is,
shall we say.
Yeah, go back and listen. If you haven't heard that, the heartbeat bill is one of your concerns. That was an episode directly for you.
Mm-hmm.
This week's podcast, though, seems to be pretty packed. We're going to give you an update on the Blue Ribbon Study Committee on Election Process and the dysfunction that has wrecked. There is no friendly way of putting it, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Wrecked the state election board. We've got some things there. Also coming out of that committee, a letter from Representative Anderson and Representative Fleming was sent to the Secretary of State. We'll go over the letter and the response to the letter from the Secretary of State back. They took less than a day to respond. The Steve West campaign, Mark Davis, and contested elections in the Senate District 21, which was certified today. We'll talk about that. We'll touch on this judge tossing Chris Carr's lawsuit against Burt Jones. We got a quick little Frostopus update for you. Welcome to the jungle. Indeed. For the AJC. We love it. We love it. I'll tell you all about it. And if we have time, we're going to talk a little bit about Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massie, and the Epstein Files.
Yeah.
Before we get into all that, though, I'll remind our audience about the random comment merch giveaway. So if you are a listener to the podcast, wherever you are, stop right now, drop a comment about what you think about us. You can say we're awful. You might get a free T-shirt out of it.
It's been said before.
It has been said before. We had one listener for a while who took great pride in every episode giving us 1 star. And it was the only person who's ever actually given us a negative review. But it was just one person. He
was worked up about something really got under that person's skin.
He thought me and David Schaefer and Josh McCoon were buddies. That was really what it was about.
Wow.
And I kept telling him, clearly you're not paying attention. But
yeah,
that's what it was about. And I don't even know if that person listens anymore, but drop a comment. It's the bottom line. All that to say, if you drop a comment, you're eligible for a random selection to have a bit of merch come your way out of the merch shop.
Nice.
We'll get right to it right after this.
Peach Pundit has an anonymous Patreon who would like to invite you to learn more about the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. No one should fight Alzheimer's alone. With your help, no one will. Learn more on their website, alz.org.
Our friends at Americans for Prosperity want to invite you to a special event called the Peach State Playbook, a conversation with State Senator John Albers, which will be taking place at Rootstock on Main Street in Woodstock, Georgia, September 4th at 6:30 p.m. And Rootstock is a wonderful venue. If you aren't going to visit with AFP and Senator Albers for their gathering there and the event, then go when he's not there. And then you'll have a nice little evening, I promise you, especially if you go on a night where they have one of the concerts downtown. It's a fantastic venue, fantastic place to have a glass of wine, good food. Can't go wrong downtown Woodstock. Thank you to our friends at Americans for Prosperity for being a partner level Patreon. If you too would like to join us as Patreons, you could head on over to patreon.com/peachpundit. Sign up for one of our tiers starting as low as $5 per month. We'll add you at the very minimum to our Pete Hegseth inspired signal chat, which seems to be hopping every day. There's somebody in there with something that causes a conversation every single day. It's been a fun little community that we're building. So again, patreon.com/peachpundit. Buzz, you are safely back from New Orleans. Any highlights from your trip before we get moving into the agenda?
Yeah, it was the State Policy Network, which is a gathering of center-right state-based policy groups. Georgia's blessed to have two of them, the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, our friends at Kyle Wingfield and company, and then not my organization, but the organization I work for, the Georgia Center for Opportunity, and led by my boss, Randy Hicks. So good time. But these kind of conferences, Scott, are always interesting because you see what's on the minds of people across the country, what issues they're thinking about and talking about. And it was good. It was a good time.
Conservatives getting together, talking about ideas.
Indeed.
And Jeff Duncan, nowhere to be found because he doesn't think conservatives work on ideas.
Sorry. We do work on ideas, a lot of ideas.
So,
many people are saying there are lots of ideas.
Lots of big, beautiful ideas.
There are lots of ideas. Yeah. Yes, big, beautiful ideas.
I love going to that conference. I'm saddened that I wasn't able to make it this year. It's the first one I missed in several years. It's always a good time there because you find like-minded people who are working on a lot of the same things in other states. So kudos to you.
Hey, we are two former state legislators. States get stuff done.
Yeah, they really do. It's not like Congress at all. But one of the things that's getting done in our state right now is there's this blue ribbon study committee on election process that is being chaired by State Representative Tim Fleming, who is also a candidate for Secretary of State seeking the Republican nomination for that race. And they had several members of the state election board stand up and give presentations. So this particular meeting was held in Clarksville. I did not go in person because I had an evening event and I knew I would not make it to downtown Atlanta in time for the evening event. So I live streamed this one. I was in attendance in person for the first two, and I'll go down to Savannah in person unless I really don't feel like driving down there, depending on what they're talking about too. But this was really a stage for the state election board to come in and air their dirty laundry.
I got a feeling, Scott, that they have a lot of dirty laundry to air.
They really, really did not hold back. And the sniping between the members, the butting heads between the members and the staff was put on full display for anybody that wanted to watch that thing.
Wow.
And I put together a quick hit podcast. It's just over 10 minutes long, where you hear Janelle King give a full-throated defense of vote buying. And I'm not spinning that.
Oh my.
I'm not spinning it. It's a 10-minute podcast. It's Janelle King and vote buying. That's what it's called. Wherever you're listening to podcasts, if you subscribe to this, you can find that. I'm making a second one too, but this is what I want to get your reaction to this. I want to describe what happened to you.
Yeah.
State Representative Syra Draper, who is a Democrat, proceeds to ask a series of questions to Janelle King about the Herschel Walker campaign giving away gas and gift cards during his last race against Warnock.
Did he give away cards to, like, cards that you could use for Lyft, the ride sharing company too?
No. So that was one of the things, like Lyft was giving people $10 off.
Oh, that's right. Lyft was doing that on their own.
And the state election board said, you can't do that.
That's a no-no.
But they said that that the Herschel Walker campaign could give out gift cards and gas cards. And Syra Draper asked Janelle King, was that during your time? She's like, no, I had a problem with that. Well, Syra Draper says, I would like to know more. Tell me, why did you have a problem with it? Well, because it was only given to a portion of voters and not every voter. Now, I'm compressing that, but that's what she said.
Yeah.
I'm not spinning it. And when I paraphrase, that is what she said. It wasn't about the vote buying aspect of it that she had a problem with it. And she was very clear because Cyber Draper was blown away. You could see it. There was nervous laughter coming from Cyber Draper. She was, this is kind of outrageous. I can't believe you're saying this. And she's like, what you're saying is if the Herschel Walker campaign had given a gas card to everybody, you would have been okay with it. And she's like, yes, because there's no imbalance.
It'd be pretty expensive to get a gift card in the hands of all 6 million registered voters in the state of Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it would be. But that didn't appear to be a stumbling block for Janelle King, who is a member of the state election board, who's tasked with making the rules, making sure the rules are followed, and for adjudicating voter fraud and election law violations. Mm-hmm. But she's saying and articulating very clearly, vote buying is okay, so long as you're trying to buy the vote of every voter. It's okay. and Zim Draper's like, are you really saying it's for so long as everybody? And she's like, where's the imbalance? She goes, well, the other campaigns may not be able to keep up. And Janelle King says they can do the same thing. Mm-hmm. That is a direct quote.
Yes.
And she goes, so there's no problem. She goes, I thought I said there was a problem if they're only giving it to a portion. And Cyber Draper's like, no. I mean, if you try to give it to everyone, yeah, there's no imbalance. There's no problem with that. As long as they're giving it to everybody. That is called vote buying, and it's a felony.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get your take. I mean, you hear a state election. You didn't watch the hearing. You heard how I'm describing it to you.
No,
I'm being as accurate as I can. But
mercifully, I was out of town.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, on the one hand, you want to give it the benefit of the doubt, and you think, let's say that matter had come up before the state elections board and Janelle is there. They would have the benefit of being able to consult with legal counsel who would say, yeah, here's the code section. Here's why you can't do that. Here's previous state election board rulings and rules and so on and so forth. But she just kept digging in.
Yeah.
She didn't say, you know what, I'd really want to examine the facts of the case, and it's your Representative Draper is bringing hypotheticals. The easy out is to say, well, that's hypothetical. You know, we need to. I tend to avoid issuing broad sweeping statements based on hypotheticals. Let's move on. You know, but she just dug in.
She did. She not only dug in. It was the confidence in which she was wrong.
Yeah,
she's clearly wrong according to the law, and it's the bravado, the confidence. Right. And I'll also say one other thing. Her opening statement to this committee was a campaign speech.
Yeah.
She took the podium and she turned it away from the committee that had invited, well, they actually didn't invite her. They had invited Rick Jeffries, and Jeffries couldn't make it, so she filled in for him.
Yeah.
But she turned the podium away from them and said, I want to address the people.
Yeah.
Could you be more transparent about making it a campaign speech?
Yeah.
And then she decides she wants to read the entirety of the Man in the Arena poem written by Teddy Roosevelt. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time seeing these as credible, serious-minded people.
Well, right. I mean, I think the problem is, right, as you mentioned, Representative Tim Fleming is a candidate who's chairing this committee, and I assume he was presiding over this committee hearing, right? He has to be careful. Now that he didn't, as you mentioned, he invited a different board members, but Ms. King was there. Yeah, it would have looked bad if he had brought the hammer down and said, no, wrap it up, you can't do that. So he had to just I can understand why he just kind of let it go and let it play out, but yeah, it's not a good look for Kelvin King's campaign here to have his wife up there saying things that are clearly against the law, that she would support him, and for making a campaign speech on his behalf at the state elections board, at this committee meeting, rather.
Yeah.
So just a bad scene.
Well,
it just brings up so many troublesome things. Scott, what is going to happen? Does she intend if, let's say, her husband becomes Secretary of State, does she intend to continue to serve on that?
That came up. Yeah. So Sarah Draper did ask her. Sarah Draper pointed to campaign speeches that she'd given where she identified herself as a member of the state election board and showed up at events with her husband saying, I'm a member of the state election board and this is my husband who's running for Secretary of State. She called her out for that. Janelle doesn't think that that is a conflict of interest. I will say this, though. Members of the board can be married to somebody who's in office, I think. This is Scott's personal thing. Can be married to somebody in office and avoid conflicts of interest so long as they're not voting on matters that are linked to their own spouse.
Sure. Right. And I'm sure that the state elections board, like every other board, I serve on the state charter school commission. There's a clear policy about conflicts of interest and what we have to do. And we have to sign a statement every year saying we are aware of this policy. We have read it.
Right.
So I'm sure that, and what she's doing might not violate the, but it looks bad. And
but Janelle turned it around.
There's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, and this looks bad. I'm sorry. Her continuing to serve on that board while her husband campaigns for this office just looks bad, Scott.
Right.
It doesn't sit right with me.
So Janelle turned it around and said, the chairman of this committee is being paid by the taxpayers to travel around the state while running for Secretary of State. Here's the difference, right?
Well, that's correct. Maybe you misstated what you said. He is not being paid by the taxpayers to travel around the state and campaign. He's being paid by the taxpayers
that's what Janelle
to
King
travel
said.
around and conduct an investigation that will be delivered as a report to the members of the legislature.
Correct.
Very different.
It is a different role. And that's why Janelle King is struggling. She may have the false confidence to think that she's not struggling. But I'm here to tell you, I had to sue because she's struggling.
Yes.
I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars because she is struggling.
Comrades and her comrades in arms who have the majority of that board.
And so I think that she has conflated the role of a legislator and her role in the state election board. They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing.
No.
And the guy who is chairing the committee, Tim Fleming, is not responsible for enforcing the law. That is a totally different role. And that's what was lost on her in that moment. She tried to conflate the two.
All right, so let's say that Chairman Fleming, or the chair of this committee, Tim Fleming, comes up with some cockamamie idea. He has to convince 90 of his colleagues in the House and 29 senators and a governor that his cockamamie idea is a great idea.
Correct.
And it's not cockamamie, it's great. Janelle only has to convince 2 others that her cockamamie ideas are great ideas.
And every time she does convince 2 of the others that her cockamamie ideas are great, it costs me $100,000. So I'm not salty at all.
And the Supreme Court says, nah, I don't think so.
Right. But then James Mills, you told me before we came on, you served with James Mills.
I did, yeah.
Nice guy.
Oh, yeah. Good guy. Got along with him great, and we didn't always agree on everything, but nobody in the legislature ever does. But no.
That's why the no button exists.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there wouldn't be a no button. But James Mills now serving as the executive director. He replaced Mike Cohn, who left earlier this year, also a former state representative. Mm-hmm. And Representative Mills gets up and within moments of taking the podium, throws gasoline on the dysfunction fire by claiming that the chairman of the board, John Fervier, is the most dishonest chairman he's ever served under in 30 years of public service in this state.
Wow.
He then proceeded to issue a challenge. Go back and watch the YouTube video of our last hearing, and you'll see it for yourself. And challenge accepted. Hi, my name is Scott, and I take the time to do those things. There will be a special episode of the podcast later this week where I will intersperse my commentary with both Representative Mills and his comments to the Blue Ribbon Committee, and also from that July hearing that he described to the committee where he said that John Fervier was being dishonest. And I will tell you something. Spoiler alert. It wasn't John Fervier that was being dishonest. This board's in trouble, fellas.
Yeah. So, I mean, Scott, you played me a little bit of the video. Should we just briefly explain what's at issue here, or save it? You want to save it for the...
I'll save it because it'll be repetitive, I think, but just know for now, you'll come back and watch the second episode because it's far more detailed. It takes me about a half an hour to break down the whole thing. So, and that's before I edit it down. I'm going to try to edit it down if I can, but right now it's running about a half an hour. Bottom line, though, is John Fervier stood up and said there was this motion made about changing who was responsible for scheduling the meetings. There was some discussion about whether or not that was a legal motion. It was not a consensus decision based upon the fact they're not sure if they were violating the law or not. They wanted to talk to the AG, but all that was left out by Mills. He simply said he wanted to consider the motion. That's dishonest. That's not dishonest. That's the spoiler alert part. But I'll go into far more detail, and we can come back and discuss it too, boys, if you'd like.
Yeah.
But it's a mess. Grab your brooms.
Bring your brooms because
it's a mess. We need to clean that board up. I'm serious, but also coming out of that, though, the legislature has passed this law that we are going to get rid of the QR codes on our ballots. The most efficient way of doing that is using a hand-marked paper ballots. And for those of you who don't know, who hear hand-marked paper ballots and they think Jimmy Carter's stolen election when he ran for state senate and all of the voter fraud that used to happen, you've not understood that the majority of Americans use a hand-marked paper ballot.
Yeah.
And that there are secure ways of doing it. There are processes now that are in place to protect the integrity of hand-marked paper ballots that we didn't have when Jimmy Carter ran for state senate in the Georgia General Assembly from Plains 20 years before I was even born. So I'm just putting that out there.
Scott and I are going to disagree on something here.
What's that?
I hate hand-marked paper ballots.
You're entitled to your opinion.
This is the modern world. Because here's what I hate about them, Scott.
Sure.
Voters make all kind of different marks on a ballot, and they put an X. Let's say you have Donald J. Trump and Joseph R. Biden there. You have two choices for president of the United States, and you got the nice little oval sitting there, and what you're supposed to do is rub your pen and fill the little oval next to the name of the person for whom you want to vote.
Yes.
People put X's.
Yes.
People put dots. People circle names. People put X's through the name.
Yep.
And then you wind up in court, especially in a close election. People run to court to argue over, well, this X over Donald Trump's name doesn't mean that they hate Donald Trump. It means that they intended to vote for him, and you need to count that vote. And judges often say, yeah, you're right, we should. And so you spend all this time in court when we have these modern things called computers that were in touchscreens where you can touch and you can select the person that you want to vote for, and a nice clean thing is printed out that tells you exactly who you vote for, and you can look at that and say, yes, this is the people I wanted to vote for, and you slide it into the wonderful little counting machine, counting computer that counts it, and you're done with it, and you don't have to go to court to argue over all the miscellaneous marks that people make on paper ballots.
These are arguments I cannot refute. Cannot refute it, except that will always be a significant portion of people who wonder if the machine is actually tallying off of their mark or off the QR code.
Well,
and if
course.
They can't read the QR code, they doubt what the
So get rid of the QR. So you get rid of the QR code, and the people are still going to think that, which is why the paper ballot please people who populate every state elections board meeting want there also to be hand counted.
Yeah, that's
ballots.
Wrong. I'm sorry. I can't look
because you can't trust the computers if you can't trust the computers that mark the ballots, you can't trust the computers that count the ballots.
Right.
And then you have to have, 155,000 people counting ballots, or you're going to have weeks and weeks before you. I don't know. They have some weird thing. They want people to count ballots at each precinct.
Yes.
Good luck trying to control your documents there.
No, that's a recipe for disaster. The hand-marked hand counted people lose me at the hand counted. There's a chain of custody issue there. There's also opportunities for ballots to be manipulated in some way. I'm not down with that. There is a very controlled process today with our risk limiting audit that would remain if we move to a BMD that didn't use QR codes. Be supportive of that over this.
Yeah.
I want to make myself clear. I don't necessarily have a problem with the system today, other than there are people who believe that their vote is not getting accurately counted. In spite of all the evidence and all the secure process.
And there are people who believe that Tucker Carlson is about to unleash upon the world his conclusive proof that the Jews were behind 9/11. And there are people who believe that too. And it's probably the Venn diagram of them and the election deniers.
I understand what you're saying. You're not getting a lot of disagreement from the arguments that you're making from me, but I have maintained all along, I foresaw what we are living through right now. I foresaw the people showing up at state election board meetings, trying to use that as a political body and as a pseudo-legislative branch. I foresaw that because of the QR code. I was the only Republican in either chamber to vote against bringing Dominion machines here. And it's not because I think the machines can be hacked. It's not because I think that they're insecure. It's because of the impact psychologically on voters.
Yeah,
that was enough. And I've always had that position, and I continue to maintain that.
Yeah, fine. I'm fine with getting rid of the QR codes.
Right. And there are OCR technologies, but this is a really long intro to the story that prompted us to talk about this.
Yes.
Which is that Representative Victor Anderson and the aforementioned Representative Tim Fleming, who's chairing this committee, sent a letter to the Secretary of State asking them to do a pilot program for hand-marked paper ballots in the upcoming PSC special election. And I want to point out, because I saw another political commentator just absolutely rip into Fleming and Anderson over this letter. But I want to point out some of the nuance in the letter, specifically this part. They said, we believe it is imperative to begin testing viable alternatives to the continued use of QR coded ballots. We ask that you solicit voluntary participation from all counties and municipalities authorized to use hand-marked paper ballots under Georgia law. Now, they didn't word it exactly the way I'm going to paraphrase it, but essentially what they're saying is, hey, dear Secretary of State, if it's legal, could you investigate this? And the Secretary of State responded the same day, right? They got the letter yesterday. The Secretary of State's office sent a response essentially saying three things. Number one, it's not legal. We couldn't do it if we wanted to.
Right.
Because the law says that specifically this PSC election, which was set by a piece of legislation as a result of all the court case delays after years, it outlines the procedures must be uniform and they cannot deviate.
Yeah.
There's a line in that code that actually says that. So this letter, if they were to honor it, they would in fact be acting outside of the law. So that was the first thing the letter in response to the Representatives Anderson and Fleming said. The second thing was, by the way, the legislature has chosen not to fund the effort to get us off of the QR code. So while it is law, there is no practical way for us to implement this. And even if you pass a bill with the appropriation in it next year in next year's legislative session, we're not going to have time to implement it in time for the next set of elections, because there are 159 counties and machines in every precinct that have to be updated. Yeah. And then the third thing they said was, we ran an OCR pilot that was allowed under the law. OCR, optical character recognition, it's computers, but it's not using QR codes. It's reading the human text, the human readable text, which is what you see when you have the ballot in your hand. And they said that pilot worked fantastic. And if you want us to do that again, pass a law and give us the money. So they got their response. So this did, I think, two things, Buzz. Number one, it allowed the people who have been hammering and clamoring for hand-marked paper ballots to have their moment of somebody's listening to us. Yeah. And it also gave the Secretary of State the opportunity to say, we want to be cooperative with the legislature, but we also have to follow the law. So please follow the law, or we're going to follow the law. If you want to change the law, that's up to you.
Prediction.
Yes.
The hand-marked ballot, please, people will not be satisfied.
Expound.
Because for the same reason that they think the state election board can just make law, you don't have to follow the law, you just do it. Just do it. That seems to be the motto of so many people on the right now. Just do it.
Right. That's the populist mindset. That's not a conservative mindset. If you're in the mindset of, well, they can just do it, even though the law says something else, you're not a conservative.
Yeah.
You're something else. I think probably a populist, a right-leaning populist, but a populist nonetheless. Because populists have no respect for our institutions, our separation of powers, 3 branches of government. What's that? Just do the thing.
Right. Well, and also all the various elections integrity experts who are here in Georgia and outside of Georgia who come into Georgia to file lawsuits all the time, they've been trying to get courts to mandate the use of hand-marked paper ballots for several years now.
Right.
And those lawsuits have failed.
They have. Because the law is pretty clear and it's up to the legislature. You want to change the law, you got to go to the legislature.
Go to the legislature and get them to change it.
And you got the bill passed, but you just didn't fund it. Like,
right.
And now the Secretary of State is set up to fail, essentially. They're going to take all the heat off of this community of grifters.
Exactly.
Because they're going to be told you're not following the law. Well, that's the next lawsuit. When Garland Favorito of Voter GA files his next lawsuit, it will be that Secretary of State didn't implement getting rid of the QR codes according to the statute. But
right.
And they're going to be like, we didn't have the money to do it.
Right.
We're going to come back with the second half of the show. Stay right there.
Conservatives Concerned is a network of political and social conservatives who question the alignment of capital punishment with conservative principles and values. Our programs include educating conservatives about the failed death penalty system and mobilizing them to bring about its end. We come to this issue for a variety of reasons. Some believe that small government and the death penalty don't go together, especially when we compare the high costs of capital punishment to life without possibility of release. Some don't trust the state to get it right. We already know that some innocent people have been sentenced to death, and for others, it may already be too late. Some believe that the death penalty contradicts our values about protecting life. Find out more at conservativesconcerned.org.
Golden Retriever Rescue of Atlanta, GRRA, is an all-volunteer, tax-deductible charitable organization. They are dedicated to providing veterinary care, comprehensive evaluation, and foster and adoptive homes to golden and Labrador retrievers who are abandoned, mistreated, neglected, or left in shelters throughout Georgia. We encourage you to visit their website grra.com and help connect people and dogs that need each other in their lives. You truly can make this world a better place by helping find homes of gold for these golden-hearted pups.
Astute listeners to the Peach Funded podcast will remember that just last week, when Buzz was not here, I talked to you all about the results of the Senate District 21 special election and how the Democrat was the top vote getter and 2 Republicans got about 17% of the vote each. Steve West found himself in 3rd place by about 65 votes total behind Jason Dickerson. And I got a text message over the weekend from Andrew Longinus, who is the political consultant working on Steve West's state Senate campaign, saying that there would be a recount. Now, the reason why I mentioned last week's podcast is because I said the very same thing on last week's podcast. That was not news. And so I let Andrew know, I already said that. You didn't have to tell anybody you guys were going to ask for a recount because state law says if you're under half a percent difference, you're entitled to ask for a recount. He went on to say, I guess he was like, well, no, I got more for you. Here's your scoop. I got more for you, Scott. Mark Davis, who is a well-known, and I'm going to say it, self-described expert in data analysis and voter rolls and finding irregularities in the state, was contacted by the campaign to look at the voter rolls for this race to see if there were irregularities. And Andrew told me in that text that Mark had seen some things that may lead them to pursue contesting the election. Now, look, Mark has a couple of different things in his toolbox. One of the things that he does is he looks at boundary lines. Sometimes after redistricting, and this happened just last year in one of the cases that Mark was involved with, it was the Mac Jackson reelection case. The Republican had sued using Mark Davis's analysis over where the lines were. Sometimes, this is an example, a generic example, sometimes the lines for a precinct or a district are down the middle of a street.
Yeah.
And so people on one side of that street vote in one House district and the other side of the street votes in a different district. But sometimes the counties get confused and they include everybody on that street in one district or the other.
Right.
And those people are voting in the wrong district.
And right. And I mean, Scott, that's an important point, because it turns out it's not as easy as it sounds to accurately, 100% accurately craft the line, draw the lines of a district. Is not. You wind up with these things that happen every now and then.
Yeah. So that's one of the tools. The other tool he has in his toolbox is looking at people who've moved and filed a change of address form. Sometimes that's a valid reason to question whether or not they should have voted in an election. Other times there's a reasonable explanation for why somebody changed their address, but they still have maintained their residency in the place where they vote.
And that's another weird thing that happens, right? If let's say you request an absentee ballot in the proper amount of time, and then you move, where can you find, those are the things that are kind of gray areas.
Yeah.
You move, but you've registered to vote anew, but it hasn't come in time. So you go to your old polling place. I mean, these are, when in a really close election, these are the kind of weird things that happen.
Right.
It's not necessarily fraud. People aren't intending to commit fraud, but
there are times when that's just not legal. Right.
Right.
And so I would give Mark the benefit of the doubt in some of those types of cases, but sometimes there are reasonable explanations for that.
Absolutely.
And unless you go and ask all of them, what is your scenario? You don't know, but you have to create the threshold in our state is you have to find more cases, more individual instances of voters who were voting in an election that should not have been allowed to than the margin of victory. In this case, that's 65. So they got to go find 66 people who voted in this election that should not have. That's a big lift. But Mark after I posted this on the blog, and the title of that post was West Campaign Plans Recount Cites Voting Irregularities. I got contacted by a one county's election supervisor. Again, my job is to work on election law. This has given me contacts across the state, people who run elections, because I want to know what their problems and challenges are, because I want to advocate for solutions for them. And I want to make sure that they have what they need. And I'm one of the people who advocate for good elections policies that make sure our elections are secure. And the best people to talk to are the people who actually run elections.
Yes.
I got contacted, she had read the post, and she said, Mark contacted me earlier this year with a voter file he said had fraudulent voters on it. And she said that he claimed that they were registered to vote at a business address. And then I investigated it, and it turned out that they all lived at the same nursing home.
Yeah.
So when I question Mark Davis, this is part of the reason why, right?
Yeah.
He's been irrefutably correct at times, but is he always willing to take the whole picture and all the other extenuating circumstances and see whether or not he's absolutely correct in saying these people should not be allowed to vote in these elections?
Yeah. Right. And this is part of the problem. I've known Mark a long time, and I've always respected he's built a successful business on building data lists, and not just for voters, but for marketing and so forth. So you can't just dismiss him. You shouldn't just dismiss him out of hand.
Correct.
Right? If Mark comes and says, hey, but where I take issue with Mark, and he's written a number of articles since 2020 that have appeared in the Federalist and other places, where differ with Mark is that he tends to, in my opinion, jump immediately to, okay, there are questionable things that happen here. There's definitely fraud. And that daggum Brad Raffensperger is blatantly ignoring obvious fraud.
Right.
It's not obvious fraud. Should you, I mean, like the what you just said with the other elections official who contacted you, if you're looking down the voter list and you say there's a whole bunch of voters registered at the same address, that seems odd. Let's look at it. Absolutely look at it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Don't write an article and put it in the Federalist saying, look at all this fraud.
Right.
Because it might not be fraud.
Right. And this is the problem I have. And I've warned Mark a long time ago. He reached out to me on Facebook and said, I can show you all this data. And I warned him. I said, I have reached a point in my life where I do not tolerate bullshit when it comes to people making false claims about elections.
Scott, you are the Charles Barkley of political punditry here in Georgia. You just don't care. You don't put up with it anymore.
I am not running for anything anymore. My allegiance is to the truth.
Yes.
My allegiance to the truth is greater than to my party. It's greater to my friends. Ask all of my former friends who wondered why I abandoned them when they started lying all the time. Like, go ask Jeff Duncan if we're friends. The allegiance is to what is right. And I told him, I warned him. I was like, if you come at me with bullshit, I'm going to tell you you're full of it. Yeah. And I told him that months ago when he reached out to me on Facebook. And all I have seen from him in his Federalist articles is a bunch of bullshit. I'll give you an example. He's on this Tim Adderholt thing. Tim Adderholt's a longtime activist here in Cherokee County. I've known him for years. Tim Adderholt filed an arrest warrant on Brad Raffensperger because he said Brad Raffensperger illegally allowed for ballots to be pre-processed in the 2020 election. Now, those emergency powers expire 120 days from when they are implemented, or if they are renewed by the organization that created the emergency rules. And so Brad Raffensperger in April of 2020 passed a emergency rule as a member of the state election board saying, we are going to pre-process mail-in ballots so that we can have our results on time.
Made total sense in the middle of a pandemic when you're swamped with mail-in ballots, right?
Exactly. And every 120 days, they would have to renew that. And in November, before the election, they renewed it. And Tim Adderholt's trying to say because they allowed pre-processing for the runoff in 2021, which is within that 120-day window, that he violated his oath of office and needs to be arrested.
Also, I believe, considered the same election, right?
Right. But there's an expiration date, but it's 120 days from November, not 120 days from April when it was originally implemented. And that's the way the emergency law was written. But Mark is out there lifting up this insane idea that Tim Adderholt can issue an arrest warrant as if it were a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
And that's why Mark Davis, even when he is right, deserves my scrutiny and my skepticism. So anybody who's bringing Mark Davis into a case at this point, if you're an attorney on the other side, you got to be looking at all of his crazy stuff that he's writing and putting out there. Because Mark's a private citizen, so I don't want to, I don't want to libel him in any way. But if you read his stuff and you're like me, you come to the conclusion that there's not a lot of seriousness there.
Well, all right. So just to have a little fun, let me push back a little bit.
Yes, please do. Because,
remember that this is Mark does uncover stuff. Okay. Ask one of our former colleagues, Dan Gassaway.
Yes.
Mark testified at Dan's challenge to the election and got an election thrown out twice because he proved the problem. As I said before, where I part ways with Mark is that he finds things that should be looked at, but then he makes the leap to say, well past looking at it, to this is obvious fraud and part of a corrupt system. Don't do that. So yeah, he may uncover stuff that needs to be looked at. So uncover stuff, look at it. And then if it proves that it crosses that threshold that you identified earlier for the West campaign of 66, the possibility of getting 66 votes to go into his favor, then the judge will evaluate that and decide whether there should be whatever the remedy is as allowed by law. So, but my free advice to Mark would be, don't write an op-ed saying there's obvious fraud. Just gather the data and let the process play out.
Well, so this is what I wrote. And I clarified it even further. I said the West campaign is also pointing to alleged issues with the voter file, which is the word that they used in my text.
Yeah.
With Andrew. Andrew sent me the text. He used the word issues. So I put that in quotes because that was their word.
Yeah.
With the voter file, based on the work of Mark Davis, Davis is a self-described election expert who has a long history of digging into voter rolls and pointing out supposed irregularities. The reason I use the word supposed is the example I just gave you about.
Yeah.
There's a reasonable explanation.
Yes.
In my experience, Davis is just as likely to be right as he is wrong, which is why I'm treating this claim with skepticism. He's earned that skepticism. He's earned it. Now, I'm not saying he's always wrong. There are plenty of times when he's absolutely on the money. But somebody like Mark cannot be taken as gospel when there are plenty of examples when he has been way off base. That's all I'm saying. There are plenty of examples where he has been.
Well, thank the Lord, we have a legal process where these things can be adjudicated.
Absolutely.
And a smart judge can look at the information that is brought forward by the West campaign. If they end up bringing any information, they might not find enough, right? And if they do, the judge will take a look at it. And in the words of Mr. Fervier, take it under advisement.
Yeah. I mean, that was a reasonable thing that Mark, one of the more reasonable comments that he and I, as we went back and forth on social media over the weekend, that was one of the more reasonable things he said. Look, they may file suit to give me the time to look at the data. And then if I don't find enough discrete cases, then they may drop the case later. But do expect them to file.
Well,
we're hearing rumors now by the end of the week.
Right. And Scott, this highlights something that you and I have said over this podcast numerous times since 2020. Every candidate has the right, if they think that something is out of order or out of place, has the right to investigate and to gather information and bring it to the appropriate court of jurisdiction and have their day in court.
Amen.
Do it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. If you've got evidence, do it. Bring it forward. That does not mean that the system is fraudulent, that the system is corrupt, that Brad Raffensperger is manipulating things and Brian Kemp is the greatest vote stealer in history, and that weird servers in Italy are controlling our elections and blah, 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 blah.
Correct.
We have a process that's worked pretty darn well for a couple hundred years.
It's a beautiful process. Just go to court. And that was my last text message to Andrew, is like, just go do your thing. I support you going to court if you think you have a case. I don't know what it looks like. I think we're in unprecedented where this is a jungle primary. You have candidates from both parties in one of these, because usually it's a head-to-head. The Dan Gasaway case was Chris Irwin and Dan Gasaway,
head-to-head.
Right?
Yep.
You have multiple candidates. This is a third-place candidate asking for the right to try to get into the runoff.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens here.
Right. I don't know what the remedy is. Let's say he uncovers it. I don't know what the remedy is.
I don't either. I will tell you this, though. If we had ranked choice voting, this wouldn't have been a problem.
That's right. That is right.
Fight me. Fight me.
You would have a Republican preparing to take office right now.
Yes. And they would either be Steve West or Jason Dickerson based upon their get from the first round. Moving away from elections and more to campaigns.
Yeah.
A federal judge tossed out Chris Carr's lawsuit against Burt Jones, not on the merits, but on standing, because the judge, Maria Calvert, basically said, look, you're suing Burt Jones and you want me to enjoin his use, but there could be another leadership committee. So I'm not actually giving you any relief. You've sued the wrong person. You need to sue the people who enforce the law. Part of the problem with that is in previous cases, the people who sued Chris Carr in his official capacity as AG. And you can't really sue yourself, can you?
Yes. That's what's always been, I love Chris Carr. I'm not trying to make fun of him, but I just keep thinking back to an episode of King of the Hill where Dale Gribble interrogated himself. Dale Gribble, representing himself as an attorney, interrogated himself on the witness stand.
Well, I mean,
I'm just envisioning if this thing ever came to trial, that's what would happen.
That's
Chris
real
Carr
life
would
in
have
Georgia.
to interrogate himself.
It's real life. It's what's really happening. So the case has to do with the unequal treatment under our scheme of leadership PACs. Leadership PACs are run by the lieutenant governor, speaker, the governor, a couple others. And they end up with a ton of money because they are allowed to raise during session and they don't have any contribution limits. Yes. In our country, there is a Davis v. California, I think is the case. It's the Davis case where the conservative judges said the courts have never allowed for candidates running under for the same race to have different contribution limits. Chris Carr has contribution limits and Burt Jones does not. So, but he sued Burt Jones and the judge said, I got to throw this out on technicality. And this is not without prejudice, meaning please sue again. And do it this time to the people who are enforcing the law. It's just weird that you're the guy who's enforcing the law.
So I'm just thinking out loud. Should Chris Carr's super PAC sue Attorney General Chris Carr?
The super PAC, though, I think it's different. I think there are a couple different things here. Like he can sue the state, and then the state would have to get conflict counsel.
Yeah.
He could sue the governor. Or he could sue the state election or the state ethics commission. Yeah. I think there are other opportunities, but there's also like, what about one of the other candidates doing it?
Yeah.
And somebody approached me and said, do you know anybody? I'm like, dude, if you're asking if Eternal Vigilance Action wants to get involved in another lawsuit, the answer is no. I've learned my lesson. I mean, it was a great victory for Georgians, but it hit us in the pocketbook in a way that is.
Yeah. Don't push your luck.
No, I mean,
what I'm hearing.
I do not want to be a litigious organization. If I never see the inside of a courtroom, God bless the attorneys and judges who make that stuff
right.
real.
But I think, Chris Carr is the Carr campaign is making political hay out of this by running ads implying that Burt Jones is shady. That's so.
I don't get mad at Burt for using the tools of the game.
No.
But I also was opposed to this tool of the game.
Yes.
There's a reason why the moment I was out of the legislature, this became law.
Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Yeah. That's what.
You want to give us the Frostopus update? You were talking about the Coweta thing.
I mean, it doesn't, right. It's let's see here. There's an article, we'll link to it in the Noonan Times Herald. And see, what had happened was the Coweta County Republican Party had a meeting, one of their regularly scheduled meetings, and Brant Frost V, affectionately known as Quattro in these environs, was chairman of that party. He stepped down. They replaced him. They immediately turned around and elected Quattro to a position on the district Republican Party. So they're not really thinking that that's a message from the Coweta County Republican Party, their voting members, to say we don't really have a problem with Quattro and his family holding leadership positions within the Republican Party. And that kind of goes back to even on their website. I haven't looked at their website in a while, but when the news came down about the birth of the Frostopus, they kind of said, "Hey, we're withholding judgment. Everybody, plenty of people in this country."
The Coweta Republican Party.
Yes, yeah, the Coweta Republican. Yeah, hey, lots of people have been falsely accused. We know that. Kind of implying that this, maybe this is a witch hunt, like the witch hunt that's gone after our beloved Donald Trump.
Wasn't there a really good quote from State Representative Josh Bonner in that article?
There was. Representative Josh Bonner was there and said it was cringeworthy well done. It was tone deaf. Party leaders were tone deaf. And here's the exact, it's just a big missed opportunity, Bonner said. There are so many folks that would love to be a part of the party who just get turned off by that kind of stuff. Coweta deserves so much better. And kudos to Representative Bonner for being there and for speaking out against it and speaking in favor of truth, justice, and the American way. So that's good on him.
The path of least resistance for a state representative or a state senator in these instances is just to not say anything and not show up and not express an opinion. That's the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance in politics is often the most rewarded one.
Yep.
It takes some courage to go into your own party's local leadership structure and say, you guys got to clean house. So kudos to Josh Bonner. Well done.
Yeah.
He's our legislator of the week. I just made that up.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I guess following on with that, another group, what's the lady's name? Lynn Westmoreland's daughter, Marcy
Westmoreland.
Marcy Westmoreland Sarkinson. I'm sorry if I'm messing up her last name. I believe that's her last name. Right. She and others are forming a new group called the Coweta Republican Alliance.
Yeah. These are life raft organizations that are popping up around.
Yes.
You know, we have one of those. They're not called Alliance, I think.
Yeah, I may have that wrong.
But I think you're right, though.
You highlighted a tweet, and so there's a tweet announcing it, and there's another organization popping up. As you said, it's got to be that kind of life raft to say, hey, we're still Republicans. We still care about the principles, such as they are, of the Republican Party.
But they need an alternative life raft to get off the sinking ship.
The official organization is not getting the job done.
Correct.
So good for them, and I hope hope everybody marches out of Coweta Republican Party headquarters down to this new organization and works to
stays involved and gets Republicans elected. Like that's what parties should be doing.
Yep.
Buzz, while you were out, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution announced it will print its last physical paper on December 1st of this year and go fully digital in January, making the AJC bloggers just like us, baby. Welcome to the blogosphere, AJC.
Man, so Scott, back in the early days of Peach Pundit, blogging was a real thing. We were getting press passes. I got a press pass to the 2012 Republican convention, went down there, blogged about a Peach Pundit press pass to that convention and blogged about the Republican convention. Well, you and I have gotten
press credentials.
Yes, Eric Erickson has given us press passes to go cover not the Red State Gathering, what does he call it?
The Gathering.
The Gathering, yes. Yeah. So I remember there were back in that day, man, at the height of of the blogging era, there were journalists who were really ticked off about it. How dare you call yourself journalist? And I never called myself a journalist. Okay, there were times that as a blogger, I did journalistic things in the sense that I attended something and wrote down what I saw and passed on to the readers what I saw. That's an element of journalism, but I'd never call myself a journalist.
Correct.
I was a blogger because I wanted to reserve the right to express my opinion, and not have to just be a neutral observer.
Well,
I'd love to see our friend Greg Bluestein wearing a
blogger T-shirt. So we put together a little welcome kit to the blogosphere for AJC reporters. We gave them a whole bunch of tips on how to make their blog run great, grow their audience, and how to manage all kinds of different aspects of being a blog. But we also created a special edition blogger T-shirt. It just says blogger across the chest in big block letters. And kudos to Greg Bluestein for actually saying he wanted one. His is in the mail. So
it's kind of like those, you see those T-shirts that say media, right? And so you can, Yeah, I mean, let everybody know about your elevated status over there at the AJC. I texted a couple of my friends who work who are real journalists at the AJC, and I got mixed reactions. Bluestein was the only one who said he'd take a shirt. Well, but Scott, I mean, seriously, it is kind of a sad day. It's 157 years. I looked it up. 157 years at the Atlanta Journal and Constitution. They used to be two papers. Now they merged.
One in the morning and one in the evening.
That's right. 157 years they've been publishing print editions, and it's an end of an era. I mean, on the one hand, you're not surprised at some point in time, the number of people who want that paper copy to hold in their hands and as they drink their morning coffee and read the news, it just gets to a point where it's just not economically feasible to continue to do that, and that's where we are.
Well, they promise through their app to be able to read it PDF style. So if you still, and you could print those out if you wanted to at your own expense, but who's really going to do that?
No.
But mothers' scrapbooks from all over Georgia now will be without AJC articles, and that's sad too.
And I'll probably run down on December 31st and grab
I predict they will sell more newspapers on December 31st than they did the entire year.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know, I mean, this is a trend all across the country, right? I'd be interested to know how many other big city newspapers have done this already. I should have in show prep taken the time to find out, but they're not the only one. Yeah. It's just it is a little sad.
Is it though? They're still working. The information's still getting out. They're still going to be biased.
I'm a Gen Xer. That's filled with nostalgia. Okay, so This is my life now.
Sure. Maybe the death of the AJC print edition will give birth to the Peach Pundit print edition. That's a lot of P's. Ooh, our last topic of the night, rounding out our discussion. We give Marjorie Taylor Greene a lot of grief around here. Sort of a responsibility and a duty to do so, in my opinion. But I'm going to give her a little bit of kudos because she has signed on. And before I even go on, we're talking about the Epstein Files here.
Yes.
There are a lot of people who are very passionate about this issue.
No doubt.
I am not among them. Right? I still see today people, Republicans in Congress, when they post on social media, someone will inevitably come along in a non sequitur manner and release the Epstein Files. Yes. There are people who are very passionate about it. Okay. Thomas Massie has issued a discharge petition, which means that if he's successful in gathering 18 signatures, so he only needs a handful of Republicans to join him. The Democrats have all said, yeah, we'll sign it. Yeah. So he only needs a handful of Republicans to do so. And if he does, then the files get released. Now, the White House is saying there's nothing in there. And Thomas Massie is saying, if there's nothing in there, you wouldn't be fighting me. So Thomas Massie is keeping the controversy alive. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, in defiance of the president, who is her buddy and her number one politician ever, has signed on to Thomas Massie's discharge petition. And bravo, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Because here's my take. If there's nothing in there and it's a big old nothing burger, what did it hurt? Yeah. Keeping it under wraps is the controversy. So kill the controversy. That's my take. So,
well, you're right. I mean, Trump continues to, he keeps calling it a hoax and says, oh, it's a Democratic hoax. And then, of course, today nobody believes it's a hoax. There may be less there than meets the eye. That might be true, but there's something there because there were a group of Epstein survivors who were at the Capitol today, calling for these files to be released. There's an attorney who represents 200 alleged victims of Epstein was on hand too. So this article, the ABC News points out there, because they say there were 4 Republicans. I just had it here. There are 4 Republicans who signed on to this. See if I can remember. MTG, Massie, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace.
And there was one more that signed on. He's on the Rules Committee.
Oh, okay.
So he's got
it's getting close, right? So if all Democrats sign on, you need, I think, 6. So they're at they're at 5. So pretty close. If the Democrats decide en masse, and why wouldn't they, to embarrass Trump? Because he continues to call it a hoax.
It wasn't. So I'm sorry. It was a Democrat from the ranking member Democrat on Rules, Jim McGovern. Okay. It wasn't a Republican. So they're still at 4.
So they need 2.
They need 2 more.
Yeah.
Barry Loudermilk, Austin Scott, Andrew Clyde, Buddy Carter, Rich McCormick, Brian Jack. Hi, OFG, Barry Loudermilk.
No,
you know what to do. Let's go.
Right. Well, right. There's, I guess, a competing resolution that's not the subject of Massie's discharge. Speaker Johnson, right or wrong, says he doesn't like this one that Massie is supporting because it doesn't do enough to protect the victims. So, bottom line, work it out, get these files out there.
Just do it.
And put the whole matter to bed.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be our episode. Thank you again for listening. If you would like, again, to participate in our merch giveaway, drop a comment, like, subscribe. The like and subscribe part, I have no way of telling if you did that. Just do that because you like us. That way, you also get notifications. We're getting our this YouTube thing. I was never really convinced. We're getting a little bit more traffic on that than we used to. I don't know why you'd want to look at these faces. Thank you. Sorry, you have to look at these faces.
It's become my number one way to listen to the podcast because I do listen to the podcast.
Well, thank you. But drop a comment so that we know you're listening, and we'll put you in the random drawing for merch. We also have people who every single month reach into their pocket voluntarily to give us just a few dollars to keep it going. They head on over to patreon.com/peachpundit, and they get all kinds of extra benefits. If at the $10 level, you could have been watching us backstage. The $5 level, you get to be in community with your fellow Patreons and our Signal chat. But we are grateful for them. They are the people who rock. They are Kenyatta Mitchell, Eric Johnson, Sergio Ortega, Bill Werkheiser, Bethany Ballard, Justin Wright, Brett Harrell, Reed Powell, John Vestal, Ryan Graham, Bo Brannon, our anonymous Patreon who wants you to learn more about the Alzheimer's Association, Mike Buchert, Ron Daniel, Stuart Wilkinson, Robert Lee, and our friends at Lee6 Media, Tony West, and our friends at Americans for Prosperity, Colin Martin, James Hall, Ryan Purvis, Hank Burnham, Jeff Cobble, Shannon Ferguson, Jordan Reed, and Sam Thomas. Thank you each for being people who rock. For Peach Pundit, my name is Scott Turner, along with Buzz Brockway. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Go Jackets.